You are listening to the Intelligent Racer Podcast, where we look to educate and entertain the endurance racing community through discussions with racing professionals and elite age groupers.
In today's episode, I speak with professional triathlete Lionel Sanders. Lionel is considered one of the best triathletes in the world and recently just won the ITU Long Distance Triathlon World Championships. I hope you enjoy. Lionel, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Adam. How are you, man?
Good. So I'm not going to dig too much into talking about your background. I actually recently watched a Bob Babbitt interview of you, and he did an excellent job. So I'm not going to compete with Bob, but I do have one question about your past, which is your first Ironman. You did a 10:14:41, which from an amateur's perspective is a really solid time. I know as a pro later on, you obviously have done much faster, but now knowing as much as you do, how much of that was natural ability versus the training you did at that time?
I mean, that was, if I go back and reflect on the training I did for that race, I probably trained more then than I'm certain I trained more then than I do now. I mean, it was I was going from like one addiction to another, and that's how I got into triathlon. And so I was basically like, I don't know, I had to have been doing like 20 hours of biking and 100K of running and 20 to 30K of swimming every single week, just, day on, day out. And so actually I would say probably underperformed a bit from that standpoint because I probably went into it, super overtrained. And then also, I had absolutely no idea how to train. So I literally my idea of doing a training session was like, go out and ride hard for 2.5 hours. And that was it. And then I had no idea about nutrition or diet or anything like that. And so, that day, that was Ironman Louisville, and it was record highs that day. And I think I drank like 5 bottles of Gatorade throughout the entire race. And, I was probably severely dehydrated and severely bonking. And so long story short, I probably underperformed, actually. But, it certainly wasn't for lack of effort because I definitely trained very, very hard for the race.
Right. And I guess for, obviously you said you were going from one addiction to another, so you're approaching this, from that perspective. But even someone who's just going for their first Ironman and just sort of wanting to be prepared and are kind of scared, I can see overtraining is obviously something that can happen all the time. I mean, did you run into injuries and other issues, or were you kind of just lucky in that regard?
I think that seems to be the biggest fear. Like the only person I coach right now is my mom. And, I constantly am trying to get this fear out of her. Like she wants to go to the pool and swim 4K continuous hard just to make sure she can do the swim. And then she wants to go do 180K bike hard just to make sure I can do the bike. And the reality is, and I think I've proven this in my training over the last couple of years now is, you don't have to do that. Don't get me wrong. You definitely have to do some volume and that sort of thing in order to be able to, exercise for, let's say, 8 continuous hours. But that is not the key to going fast. However, this idea that you got to go out and do long race pace stuff all the time. And that is, I guess you got to kind of test it for yourself to get over that fear.
Right.
But anyways, nowadays, I probably am doing some of the least training of anyone in the sport. And I think I'm seeing, good results because of it. But in order to make, I guess, race pace easier, I think the conclusion that I've come to is that you've really got to polarize your training. And I guess that's the only way is to get your upper limits significantly higher than race pace. And then eventually that's what makes race pace easier, not these long slogs of workouts.
Right. And so when it comes to,
I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah. So when it comes to like cycling and stuff, I'm sure, doing a lot of intervals and power based training to get that, I guess, FTP up as high as possible before you get into your endurance phase of your training would be kind of how you approach it.
Yeah. Throughout the entire year, really, I start off the way I kind of periodize the whole thing. And I've only, it's taken me like 7 years of analysis to come to this conclusion is, at the beginning of the year, let's say this year I started in December, basically of 2016. and I do like super high end stuff, and I don't do any threshold work whatsoever. So if I do 2 bike workouts a week, I'll do like for I guess you would call like almost like anaerobic capacity work and VO2 max work, and so that would make up all of my workouts. And then as we get a little bit further down the road, then I'll get into like high end VO2 max work and like very high end threshold work, short duration threshold work. And then a little bit further down the road, another few months down the road, then it's like low end VO2 max work, high end threshold, moderate range threshold work. And it's really not until basically now, which is, what are we, like we're 9 months in, almost 10 months of training, that I really allow myself to get down to more threshold based training. And even that is still significantly higher than my Ironman race pace. And that's, so really, when I get to Kona, for instance, in a month from now, it'll be the first time I really ever spend any time at, 315 to 330 watts for literally the entire year. So it actually should feel, and that's why it does and should feel super easy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So I wanted to fast forward to, I guess, a few weeks back. I mean, you and I were both in British Columbia, although I was up there fishing and you were winning a world championship. So congratulations on that. So talk just a little bit about that race. I mean, one thing I noticed was, or heard, that you got a flat, you still got back into it and obviously won. So, I mean, how do you kind of stay mentally in the game when you get these obstacles and just sort of, I guess it's a confidence thing, but how do you go about handling it?
Yeah. I mean, that's the last time I got a flat, and I was becoming aware of it too. I got a flat almost 2 years to the day prior at Ironman Montalban, and I did not handle that well at all. In fact, they were doing like a video, like recording the thing for a show they were making afterwards. And like, it took me 10 minutes to change the flat. And I got my hand caught in the chain, and I got the chain jammed, and they literally had to cut the audio because I was starting to like swear and everything. I was getting so frustrated. And so anyways, after that race, 2 things I changed. I was running tubular at that time. And what happened with the tubular is I must have had like a slow leak or something, and it didn't go flat all the way. And so I rode probably a solid 60K, with a very low tire. And it wasn't until I went around a corner and the rim bottomed out that I realized I had been running a very, very low PSI tire.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it. I couldn't understand why the heck I was losing time and yet pushing such good power. And then I realized it at that point. But anyways, then I switched to clinchers after that race. So at least then, if the tire's blowing, it's blowing out immediately, and I know, and I'll be able to change it. So that was one of the changes I made. And then also, like, it took me literally 10 minutes to change the flat, and that's just absolutely unacceptable. And so I got a spare rim, and I just left it around the house. And I would, for almost 2 years, all of a sudden I'd be walking by the rim, and all of a sudden I'd just like shout out in my head, "Flat tire," and I would change the flat as fast as I could, under any circumstance. And so that's where I got that's what I practiced for, because I knew, actually a friend, because I always carry a flat kit in races. And the reason why is because a friend of mine, I did Muskoka 70.3 in 2013. It was my first pro race. And I ended up winning the race by like 6 minutes. And my friend said to me, he's like, "Did you have a flat kit?" I said, "No, like if I get a flat, the race is over." And he said, "You can't change a flat in under 6 minutes." I said, "Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe." And so then that was where I realized, well, actually the race isn't over.
Right.
If you won by 6 minutes, obviously you should be able to change a flat in under 6 minutes. So anyways, that's why I always carry a flat kit. So all of these things were in preparation for this ITU Worlds race. And basically I was in second place at Josh Amberger was in first place. At 90K, I got a split. I was a minute and 45 down, and we were coming down this fairly steep descent. I was going 70.2 kilometers an hour. I can verify that in my GPS file. And that's where I got the flat tire. And we were going around age groupers, and it was a kind of a corner. So it did freak me out a bit, because I never flatted at those kinds of speeds. So it took me a little bit to slow down. And anyways, interestingly, I was like eerily calm. I don't even think my heart rate raised whatsoever. I didn't have any negative thoughts whatsoever. Never once did I think like, "Oh, the race is over, blah, blah, blah." Actually, it was the opposite. In my brain, as I'm fixing this thing, I'm starting to say, wouldn't this make a great story if you changed this flat and then won the race?
Yeah.
And so that was my motivation. And so I ended up changing the flat in under 4 minutes, got back onto the bike. I knew the tendency after a situation like that is to then ride as hard as you possibly can. And I knew that wasn't the answer because I had 30K of running to do. And, I was going to have to run probably the best run of my entire life if I had any shot at winning the thing. So I rode nice and controlled for the final 28K. And then basically I had probably one of the best runs I've ever done. I think I went, after biking 120K, I went through the half marathon in 1:13:31. So, that's probably one of my better half marathons if we just ended the race there. So anyways, that was the experience. And I was pretty proud of the whole thing, staying focused. I came off the bike with a 6-minute deficit. So, obviously the negative self-talk can start to creep in, but, I just break it down. I broke it down. It was 3 10K loops. I just broke it down into like 2. All you got to do is pull back 2 minutes every 10K. And after the first 10K, I had pulled just over 2 minutes back. And I knew being more strong in the running, I knew whatever I pulled back in the first 10K, I would probably pull back even more in the third 10K. So that's when I started to get the belief that, maybe I can catch them. And then I eventually caught him at 23K.
Yeah. Well, if I was a professional, I would probably fear you one of the most out of anyone. And the reason being is when you're on that run, it seems like you can go to a deep, dark place and just absolutely take in as much pain as possible to push it to the limit. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, what is your thought process when you're, I know you said you broke it down into, just into those loops, but, do you have any other things you do for mental toughness or to break it down?
I mean, first off, I opened my big mouth and I did a couple interviews before, and people were, because my swim's been improving. So for the longest time, I'd never see the front of the race on the bike. And so I'd always come off with, let's say 3. I mean, the biggest deficit I ever came off the bike with and ended up winning was 8 minutes. And that was probably, that is the best run I ever done. It was against Andrew Starkowicz in Racine 70.3, 2014. I came off the bike with an 8-minute deficit, and then I ended up running 109.37. And caught him at 12.5 miles, so half a mile to go. And that's by far my best run I ever done. So anyways, I opened my big mouth in these interviews and said, something along the lines of, it's weird now because I'm starting to catch the front of the race and I'm becoming the hunted. And I really enjoy being the hunter. So I feel like me opening my mouth is why I got that flat tire, just to make me the hunter again.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel very, I love being the hunter. I think I don't really know how, like Josh Amberger, for instance, I don't know how you can run from the front. You know what I mean? Like, it's so much more enjoyable, so much more fun to have this like carrot out there that you're chasing after.
Yeah.
And so in terms of actually how you go about doing it, I mean, every day is mental training. Like, day 1 of the training block, yeah, usually that one doesn't go too bad. But day 2 through 7, I mean, those are, each day it gets progressively more challenging and more of a mental training. And I think the way that I train too, because I do, really hard and then really easy, and I take a lot of recovery, when you get back into it, I mean, you're like very recovered and very rested, and so foreign to you to work so hard. I totally get why people tend to do more like training in the middle and not polarize it so much, because it's so much easier to maintain like a more, middle ground level of hard training as opposed to really hard and really easy.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's a piece of the puzzle. And then also I think just, I genuinely enjoy pushing myself. Like I really, really do. And I really cultivate it. And when the going gets tough in workouts, I really appreciate and, acknowledge the fact that really the workout starts now. When your brain starts screaming, it's time to stop, it's time to slow down, it's too much, it's too fast. That is the exact moment that the workout starts. And so all of the work that you do beyond that moment really is the workout. And so, I mean, I literally push myself, for instance, on my long run 2 blocks ago, the long run right before I went to ITU Worlds, I literally started crying, actually tears coming out of my eyes at 33 kilometers into the long run, because I was just so tired. I had done my long day, 7-hour continuous day the day before. I was just so tired. But then there's this like thing that comes behind it that like smiles, and I get like this joy from the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, we don't have that in real life, you know, like we don't really have hardship like that. Well, I mean, I don't anyway. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure people do have hardship, but it's like something in the modern world that we don't have much of. It's like what feels to be real hardship. So, you know, this is self-inflicted hardship, and it's quite enjoyable to experience it and to come out on the other side and realize, oh my God, it wasn't the end of the world and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that is what I'm constantly cultivating in practice. And I really view training predominantly as mental training and not as physical training. And so, I mean, I think that's probably the biggest piece of the puzzle. In that race in particular, though, someone shouted, and it's so weird what motivates you and what you remember when you have like so little brain function in these races. Someone yelled to me at, I want to say like 6 to 8K. They said something along the lines of, "There's blood in the water." And I that for whatever reason that resonated with me. And I just started chanting that in my head, except I added the F word in front of, "There's blood."
That's awesome.
And I just chanted that over and over. And for whatever reason, I mean, that's the way I race. I race angry. I race, you know, it's almost like you're going into war, and, you know, it's like an outlet for all of those energies that you don't really get to express and would be very unhealthy if you express them in your daily life.
Yeah.
But you get an opportunity to express them in racing. So
awesome.
That's the short version.
Yeah, well, awesome. And from a fan's perspective, I think one of the reasons people enjoy watching you so much is this approach to racing is amazing, and you just don't leave anything out there for, you know, you push it all the way. So I know from a fan's perspective, we appreciate it. So I wanted to touch a little bit on your indoor training, because I know you do a lot of it, and it's something that you know, a lot of us do. I live up in New York City, so obviously not up in Canada, but you know, we have our winters. I do a lot of indoor stuff. So I was just curious if you can just talk about, you know, why do you do a lot of indoor training? And I'm also curious as to, you know, you go into these deep pain caves and you really focus on that mental part. Are you doing anything to entertain yourself while you're training? I mean, music or movies or anything, or are you just 100% absorbed by the workout?
I mean, first off, I got into the indoor training because I was riding my bike here. I live in Windsor, Ontario, very automotive centric. It's like the automotive capital of Canada. And like people are like very anti-biking here.
Yeah.
And I literally got hit 4 times in 4 years of outdoor biking, one of which I woke up strapped to a board in the back of the ambulance, didn't remember who I was, front teeth knocked out. And, you know, my seat, the big thing that scared me was my steel seat post was bent forward probably 3 inches because I got hit by a snow plow.
Wow.
And the plow hit the seat, and had that, you know, back of that plow been like 3 inches higher, that would have been my spine, and I probably wouldn't have use of my legs. And that's what freaked me out and scared me enough to say, it's not worth dying for. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to die riding my bike, at least not by getting hit by a car. You know what I mean? And so that's how I got into the indoor training originally, at least the indoor bike training. And then as I got into indoor bike training, I realized, actually, this is better than riding outside. There's no stop signs. There's no distractions. There's no nothing.
Yeah.
And I can control every aspect of it. I can control the climate. I can control, I mean, I've even got to the point now where I have heat lamps and I can control like the infrared radiation in heating my skin. And so, I mean, from that standpoint, it's fantastic. And then also I discovered the rollers now, because that was one of the limitations of the stationary bike trainer was, well, it's not really apples to apples because the bike doesn't move.
Yeah.
But now that I can actually torque the bike too, my riding style is much more like it is outside. And so really I'll never ride on the road again anyway, other than in races, because quite frankly, it's better what I'm doing now. And then as I discovered that, then I started to say, well, what about the treadmill? And so then I came to find as well, hey, this is really good too. The beauty of the treadmill, one of the big things is, I mean, oftentimes it's difficult to find a training partner. And so the treadmill is like your best training partner ever because it forces you to run. And I used to back my treadmill right into the wall so that your incentive to keep up with the treadmill is that you don't fall off the back, smash the wall, and die.
Yeah.
And that was good motivation. So, I mean, that's how I got into it. Then in terms of distraction and that sort of thing, I mean, I don't want to distract myself. I want to be, as I said already, I really want to, you know, embrace what it is, these sensations that are coming. So for me, music doesn't distract me. It really, it does the opposite. It centers me. You know what I mean? Just like if you put at, a meditation, you might put like some sort of whatever deep kind of music on to sort of more center yourself. Same deal with music. And then also because of like camaraderie and that sort of thing, in order to push myself, I've started to get into using Zwift, this like indoor cycling platform.
Yeah.
So I feel like I'm riding outside. Like I feel like I'm around people, and it feels like it keeps me really honest and keeps me like, these people can see what I'm pushing right now. And so if I'm doing a hard interval, am I really pushing as hard as I can, or am I not? And so, there's that social aspect of it that really helps.
Right.
So I try not to distract myself in any way, but those are the ways that I help, I guess, pass the time or whatever you want to say. I tinkered with like watching videos and stuff, but it's like deadening though. Like it takes you away from the biking.
Yeah.
And I try not to do that. I'm trying to stay centered, so I don't do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I did read some research that said that basically concluded that if you can perform complex mental tasks under hard, exertion, there's like a performance gain, because when you take those really hard mental whatever functions out, and then you go back and do that same thing, obviously all that mental energy is freed up, and you're free to push more power for the most part. So one of the things I did, and I continue to tinker around with, is like, for instance, I got a Poker Stars account, and I'll play poker while I'm doing hard threshold intervals.
Oh, interesting.
And I have to like really think about the cards, you know what I mean? My cards, my hand, in relation to the hands and the betting that's happening. And it's actually really, really an interesting idea that I think, I'm just starting to test out and sort of scratch the surface of.
Right. And how are you doing with the poker game while you're doing the workouts?
I only play for fun. I only play money. But,
okay.
I'm doing pretty good with my play money. I don't know what that means. It certainly doesn't motivate me to upload my real money into it. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. So, you've been quite open about your swimming. You don't have a swimming background. It's obviously super, finesse, technical type of sport, and it's something I've struggled with myself. So I can totally relate, and I really look up to you because of how much you've improved. But one of the things I think I heard was that you do use a endless pool now to do some of your training. What is your kind of weekly swim workouts looking like now? How much of it is endless pool, real pool, dry land, strength training? What is your mix there to kind of get better?
I do. The endless pool I bought really as like ultimate training tool. I look at it as like a set of fins or paddles.
Yeah.
Just a really expensive set of fins. Because I'm doing all these drills and crap, and quite frankly, I don't even know why I'm doing them most of the time. Like I understand like what supposedly they're supposed to improve upon, but I've never really felt like they've been very effective, because I've always thought it's nothing like real swimming. You know what I mean? Like when I go to swim again, doing a single arm drill is nothing like when I have to actually turn and rotate both sides and breathe and blah blah blah. So I was always disenchanted by drills. And then another piece of the puzzle was I've been able to analyze my bike and run. I'm not a very talented bike and runner, but I've been able to analyze my bike and run training as well as technique to a point where I think I've gotten them to world-class levels. But the swim, I've never been able to see myself. And so, every now and then I get someone to come with me to the pool and take a video, but it's just so disconnected, you know what I mean? And then you go back to the pool, you work on it. Yeah. And it's just, you know what I mean? It's just so disconnected, and you work on it for a week, you get another video, you're like, it looks the exact same as when I took the video last time. And so anyways, that was my motivation. Was with the endless pool, I've got mirrors on the bottom, 2 different mirrors, one facing sort of on an angle upwards and one on the bottom. And I can literally see every single aspect of my stroke. And so now I'm done with drills. I've just thrown them completely out the window. The only drill I'm ever going to do from now on is swimming, except I swim and I work on I make sure that I can see that I'm improving the elements that it is that I'm trying to improve upon. Yeah. And really in 3 weeks time, I've made significant gains in those elements. And I basically only swim as hard as I can swim when I'm in the pool, in the endless pool. I only swim as hard as I can swim while still maintaining the perfect form or application of what it is that I'm trying to improve upon. And so anyways, I probably swim about 9 times a week, of which 2 of those days so I swim every single day, in which 2 of those days will be a double. And so about 6 of those swims will be in the endless pool, and then 3 are in the real pool. In the ones in the real pool are the hard swims, are the non-technical swims, because the reality is the water is moving. It's much different than still water. And so you have to go and prove, and you don't have a mirror, obviously, in the real pool. So you have to go prove that what it is that you're working on, you're also improving upon in the real conditions. And my conclusion after a month is absolutely, because absolutely what you're working on in the endless pool, what you're doing is you're ingraining that muscle memory. And even though the water, whatever, how you say, the fluid dynamics or whatever is a little bit different in the real pool, fact of the matter is you're still suspended in water, horizontally in water. And, most of the muscle recruitment patterns and memory is the same. And so anyways, I'm doing the best swim of my entire life now. And I would definitely say swimming in this endless pool is contributing to that.
Did you come up with that idea yourself, or did someone else? This is the first time I'm hearing about it. I've heard a lot of endless pool, but not the mirror part.
It's been, they sell the mirror, but it has been my dream literally for like a solid year anyway, to get one of these endless pools for this very fact. Just because I would always do the videos and I would always feel so disenchanted with the video because it's not instantaneous.
Exactly.
And I had heard of like regional training centers and stuff who had a TV right on deck on like a 10-second delay that you could emerge and you'd see yourself swimming up to the wall in the video. But it's like, that's like seems super unrealistic for me to bring a video PA or whatever, an AV system to the pool deck and try and do this sort of thing. So this was like the ultimate training tool that I could buy. And basically I won the race, the challenge. It was like Challenge's inaugural world championship. And I made a pact with myself because it was pretty good. It was like $40,000 first prize. And I said, if I win this race, I'm spending all the money on an endless pool and reinvesting it into my future.
Awesome.
And that's what I did with it.
Awesome. Well, that's very cool. So we're almost out of time. So I guess I'll leave you with one final topic or question, which is Kona. So obviously it's coming up very soon in a month's time. So I think I read or heard you say you wouldn't go back until you were sure you were competitive, especially in the swim because of the nature of these races. So you are going back. And so I guess, just talk a little bit about that. When did you make that decision? How did you make that decision? And what is your plans from here till, October when the race is?
I made a pact after Ironman Arizona. I did Kona last year and it went terrible. And then I did Ironman Arizona and it went a lot better. And I basically felt like I'd proven myself. I've proven that even in just 5 weeks time after Kona, if I did enough volume, I can execute a good Ironman. So I felt like I didn't have anything to prove anymore. And so basically I said, until I'm swimming, I'm certain I'm swimming in the second pack. And the second pack in Kona, for instance, contains guys like Sebastian Kienle, Forrest Stein, Matt Hansen, Michael Weiss, Matt Russell. These are all good cyclists. Until I can prove, and I didn't come out with them last year, but until I can 100% be certain I can come out with that group, I'm not going to Kona. And so basically I worked really hard, swam a lot, started to get smarter with how I was training. And I went to Oceanside in, I think it was April. I came out of the water basically a minute and a half down of the first pack and 2.5 minutes down to Jan Frodeno, who is like the gold standard of swimming. Yeah. And then 2 months later at Challenge Samarin, I came out 2.5 minutes down to Alistair Brownlee, who also is a gold standard, and 3:15 down to Richard Varga, who most people say is the best swimmer in all of triathlon. And I was only a minute and a half down to the first pack, the real pack. And I came, but the big one that basically sealed the deal for me was I swam literally side by side with Sebastian Kienle the entire time. And so basically I had achieved the goal that I had set out to achieve for the year. And so it was a combo of that. And then also, I think I'm just becoming aware of the fact that I'm getting older and you don't, I'm entering prime time, and you don't know when it's going to be over. You don't know if you could get anytime you could get a season-ending injury, or a career-ending injury, and never get another shot. So Kona's the pinnacle. Kona's what I got into it for, and so that's when I decided, all right, I'm back in Kona. And so then once I decided that, then that changed the whole season trajectory. That's why I entered in ITU Worlds instead of 70.3 Worlds. And then I guess that brings us to now. And basically, I went into ITU Worlds in very good shape. I probably could have executed a good Ironman. So there's not too much more fitness, I don't think, that's going to be gotten. Now it's just doing, a couple of hard sessions, a couple of long sessions, really, just to make sure that the neurons can fire for 7 or 8 hours. And then just continuing to do this flip-flop back and forth in the endless pool, working on the technique, going to the pool and making sure I can execute it in the still water, back and forth. And that's it. The big mistake I think a lot of people make is doing insecurity training. And the reality is, you've done most of the work now. Inside of a month, it's very little. You're not going to get in very much better shape. And so there's no point in trying. There's no point in chasing numbers and stuff like that. More or less, you want to get confident now. And so that's really what I'll do this next month. I'll spend this next month doing.
Well, I'm looking forward to Kona. I always do, but I'm definitely going to be watching and rooting for you, as you're definitely one of my favorites. So it'll be awesome. And, thanks so much for your time today, Lionel. I really appreciate it, and sharing, your training and all your stories. It's been great.
No problem, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for listening to the Intelligent Racer Podcast. For more information on this and other episodes, please visit www.intelligentracer.com. Also, be sure to check us out on social media, and please review us on your podcast directory. Join us next time for another edition of the Intelligent Racer.